The White House is expected to officially release the framework of an immigration deal today, and tomorrow President Donald Trump delivers his first State of the Union. The White House is calling it a unifying speech with the theme Building a Safe, Strong, and Proud America. President Trump touched on a number of topics like the economy and tweeting in an interview with Piers Morgan. CBS's Hinadoba has the details from New York.
President Trump, known for his tweet storm, says his tweets are sometimes sent by advisors, but mostly he writes them himself.
If I don't have that form of communication, I can't defend myself.
In an interview with Piers Morgan that aired Sunday, the president said he uses the social media platform at all hours to combat what he called fake news.
Sometimes in bed and perhaps sometimes at breakfast or lunch or whatever, but generally speaking, during the early morning or during the evening, I can do that.
Mr. Trump has used Twitter to criticize the Russian investigation. CBS News has confirmed that last June, the president talked about firing special counsel Robert Mueller, citing 3 areas of possible conflict of interest.
If he's going to go down this road, which I'd advise him absolutely do not do, Mr. President, let Mr. Mueller do his job.
CBS News' Major Garrett reports Mr. Trump never issued a direct order to do so in any written form, though he did say he favored this action in the presence of senior staff. Republican Lindsey Graham insists that Mueller's job is in no immediate danger.
But he did not fire Mr. Mueller. If the report is true, Mr. McGahn did the right thing, and to the president's credit, he listened.
The White House says President Trump is looking ahead.
We're doing incredibly on an economic basis, financial. During the course of a little more than a year, we've had, think of it, 84 stock market records. It's going to go higher.
And he'll tout America's progress in his upcoming State of the Union speech tomorrow night. Hinadoba, CBS News.
And President Trump will also press for military spending and an agreement on immigration during tomorrow's address. Meanwhile, Bruno Mars was the big winner at the 60th Annual Grammy Awards, taking home half a dozen honors, including Song, Record, and Album of the Year. The night, though, was as much about performances that highlighted social and political issues as it was about the awards. Several artists wore white roses in support of the Me Too and Time's Up movements. And it's that time again. Tax filing season is here. Beginning today, the Internal Revenue Service will begin accepting 2017 returns. This year, the deadline to file is April 17th. You do have 2 extra days. April 15th falls on a Sunday, and the District of Columbia will observe Emancipation Day on April 16th. Roughly 155 million individual tax returns are expected to be filed this year. The IRS suggests filing electronically to get quicker refunds. More information is available at irs.gov. Closer to home, the former Milwaukee County Sheriff, who became nationally known for his support of President Donald Trump on the campaign trail, will speak at the Yellowstone GOP dinner. In consistent fashion to David A. Clark Jr.'s persona, the event is titled Let's Have a Ball and Build a Wall. Tickets are available for the Lincoln Reagan dinner on March 9th and range from $25 to $1,000. This year's event is set to take place at the Swift River Ranch in Billings. Congressman Greg Gianforte and Senate candidates will be in attendance. The death of a man from Circle is under investigation after he crashed his pickup truck. The Montana Highway Patrol says the 22-year-old man was driving northwest of Circle Sunday morning when he failed to negotiate a curve. The GMC Sierra slid, overturned in a ditch, and ejected the driver. We're told he was not wearing a seatbelt. The trooper's report indicates speed and alcohol were possible factors in the crash. This is the 9th death on Montana roadways so far this year. On to Health Watch. Flu numbers in Montana continue to rise with almost 600 new cases reported across the state. That's according to the most recent report by the Montana Department of Health and Human Services for the 3rd week of January. So far this flu season, more than 2,500 cases have been recorded in the state, resulting in 353 hospitalizations and 20 adult deaths. Among the counties with the highest number of newly diagnosed cases, Flathead with 67 and Lewis and Clark had 71. Yellowstone County had the highest number of new cases in our viewing area at 47. Going on special assignment, deaths caused by drug overdoses are on the rise. MTN's Morgan Davies takes a look at the rise of overdose deaths here in Montana and what law enforcement believes could be the cause of this upward trend.
It is approximately 50 times more powerful than heroin.
Fentanyl, a prescription drug mostly used to treat cancer patients in their final stages. It's now more than ever being used as a recreational drug.
Fentanyl's been present around here for a long time in various forms, but the unknown substances and unfortunately the accessibility to it really increased as of last summer.
So just how easy is it to get your hands on fentanyl? Well, I'm actually on a popular social media website and I found email addresses, different links to actually purchase all different types of fentanyl products.
It's very tricky to determine where the fentanyl is coming from.
In 2017, Gallatin County saw 4 deaths due to fentanyl overdoses. Also last year, a large fentanyl heroin bust was made in Bozeman, linking that batch of fentanyl-laced heroin to overdoses in Butte. And that's how most opiate users come into contact with fentanyl. It's used as a cutting agent in heroin.
The proper steps to measure and to take the quality controls that a pharmacy would take or a pharmaceutical company would take is not taking. So you may take a pill that has an unknown quantity of fentanyl.
It doesn't take much to get a lethal dose of fentanyl. As you can see here, a lethal dose of heroin is about the size of a dime. The lethal dose of fentanyl is much smaller.
It's an unknown, and that's the danger of it. A very, very small amount of some kind of transdermal opioid could end up being an overdose.
There's the danger for law enforcement officers. Fentanyl is transdermal. For medical use, it was sold as a patch that patients could wear to ease pain. But for officers out in the field, coming into contact with fentanyl could be deadly.
We've done basically a department-wide training on the exposures and what to look for and how to treat other officers or potentially treat ourselves if we do become in contact with fentanyl.
All officers are now carrying Narcan.
We want to give them an extra tool to be able to be sure that they can immediately reverse those effects.
Unfortunately for law enforcement, coming in contact with the unknown is a bigger risk. These fentanyl products are no longer just coming from the pharmaceutical companies. Fentanyl is being manufactured out of the U.S. and then being shipped back.
Chances that we will come across it have increased. The potency of it, the more varieties that it comes in, the unknowns, that's the reason we had to take a precaution.
Attorney General Tim Fox recognized the increase in lethal doses of fentanyl moving around Montana. In October of 2017, he urged law enforcement to look at overdose deaths as homicides instead of accidents. On special assignment in Bozeman, Morgan Davies, MTN News.
Thank you, Morgan. Turning to news in Billings, after swastikas and KKK graffiti and anti-LGBTQ flyers surfaced this week, non-Nartone Billings took a stand and are urging others not to stay silent and ignore the messages. Grace United Methodist Church invited the organization to a meeting called Upstanders Unite. Those invited to speak said it's important not to ignore the negative messages and to support those who have been targeted.
I'm a firm believer that Christ acts in love, but that love can take on different forms of messaging, and that love is not weak and love is not silent. And so if we choose to tolerate hate messaging, then we have to accept that that is going to open the doors to greater acts.
And in Great Falls, the Montana Racial Equity Project put together a Dismantling Hatred Skills and Strategies workshop. The workshop is meant to help everyone become more aware of what others may see as offensive. People from all walks of life that identified themselves with many backgrounds, cultural groups, and racial identities showed up. Participants were presented with a series of scenarios on a screen and were asked to base their opinions on how they would react to those situations. Those in attendance were also paired off in groups and discussed worldwide racial issues. Participants Jessica Lair says she walked away more knowledgeable about equality issues.
Gaining the tools to actually, when we see those things happening, that we interject and that we acknowledge that it exists, because these are real issues that face a lot of people, maybe not in our own communities, but they exist.
To learn more about the event or the Montana Racial Equity Project, go to themtrep.org. Before we take a break, we're introduced to a duo whose passion for music and American songwriters led to the creation of a radio program and music venue. Here's their story in this week's Under the Big Sky.
Grew up in Winifred, Montana. My folks are ranchers. When I left high school, I knew I wanted to do music, but I had no idea how I was going to get there. I went to audio engineering school down in Arizona. I was farm fresh. I didn't know how to hook up a VCR. So after I finished school, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to be back in Montana. I really didn't intend on having like a commercial studio, having a place. A friend of mine who was in the space we're in now called me and he said, "I'm leaving. Do you have any interest in this?" I kind of took that phone call as a sign, and I had just met Doc. Everything was really kind of coming together in a way that I didn't want to ignore. I was terrified and had no idea what was going to happen. I was booking songwriters to play the front room, which wasn't a venue. It was kind of just house concerts. It was very loose. Doc said, "I'm going to record this night." It was Mike Beck, pretty well-known Western cowboy troubadour. From that first recording of Mike Beck, we created the entire format of what the next 315 acts were going to try to follow.